And the fence here goes about 8 feet high. But over time, the fence is kind of wearing thin here. So there are some gaps. And I wonder if I can show you the property without dropping my phone here, guys. That's where Barry and Honey Sherman were murdered. I am on one of the most notorious streets in the city, Old Colony Road. And this street is famous for something that happened over 7 years ago. And it is the murder of Barry and Honey Sherman. And if you're not familiar with the story of the Shermans, back in 2017, they were murdered in their mansion here on 50 Old Colony Road. And they were both found in a seated position right beside their pool, which was in the lower level of their mansion. And recently, new information has come to light in regards to their murder, and the Toronto Police Service has been quite close-lipped about any progress they are making in this still unsolved, perhaps cold case in Toronto. And Barry Sherman was a billionaire. He was the founder and CEO of the generic pharmaceutical company Apotek. And his wife, Honey Sherman, was a philanthropist, and together they donated hundreds of millions of dollars to charities throughout the city. And on December 13th, the new information that has come to light, and I'm walking towards the site where their mansion used to be. It is now demolished. But the new information that has come to light is that the neighbor who lived just across the road on the south side of their property did have a working video camera on the evening of their murders. And initially the police did not seek out video footage, and the neighbor actually insisted that the Toronto Police Service have a look at the videos. Their video footage shows that On the evening that they were murdered, 2 SUVs pulled up to Barry and Honey Sherman's neighbor's mansion, and they had a crescent-shaped driveway. And at about 6:17 p.m., this grainy footage, which was observed by a Toronto Star reporter, which is a local newspaper in the city, who has observed it, but they do not have copies of the video. But on that evening, a white SUV was seen pulling up to the neighbor of the Shermans. And right in front of me there is the property of where the Shermans were murdered. 50 Old Colony Road right there, guys. It is now numbered 48 Old Colony Road. And it looks as though there is a new development here since last I have been here. And I do believe that the home that had the view, the camera on the south side, and I can't be 100% sure, but I do believe it was either this home or this home here. And back in 2017, a lot of people who resided on this street did not have security cameras. In fact, Barry Sherman, a week before he was murdered, there it is there, guys, the property. So a week before Barry Sherman lost his life, and as far as I know, this property is still for sale. A week before he lost his life, prior to a Toronto Leafs game, a hockey game, he was having dinner with a friend, and his friend said to him, you should get yourself some security cameras. And he said, if someone's going to get me, they're going to get me regardless of the cameras. So on that evening, one of these homes here caught very suspicious activity, and what they caught was grainy footage of a white SUV pulling up from the east side where I am at now and pulling up to the west side. And I'm not quite sure if these two lots here are the 50 Old Colony Road property that has now been split into two. There is another mansion right here. And the camera caught a white SUV pulling up into the Crescent driveway. And then 30 seconds later, a second SUV is seen pulling up into the Crescent driveway. And the first SUV, the white one, parked on the left side of the house. And then the second SUV pulled in to the Crescent driveway. It was a light-colored SUV. And we'll name that vehicle B. So vehicle A parked right on the left side of the Crescent driveway, and vehicle B, 30 seconds later, pulled onto the east side of the driveway, facing north. And then this is where the suspicious activity starts to take place, guys. And this area here is an affluent neighborhood in Toronto. And as soon as vehicle A pulls in to the driveway, a passenger gets out and goes to the front door. And in the grainy video footage, there are no lights on in the property, only one light where the garage was. And he goes to the front door. And then within a couple of minutes, a passenger from vehicle B gets out of the car and goes to the front door too. And then 2 other passengers get out of the SUV and go to the front door. And the passenger from vehicle A went back and forth from the front door 3 times to their vehicle. And that is seen on the grainy footage. At one point, one of the passengers who got out of the second vehicle is seen running across the property. Now, to give you context, this all was happening between 6:17 and about 7:09 p.m. And at around 6:15, Honey Sherman had left the Apotex building where she was discussing with her husband, Barry Sherman, building their new $30 million home on Forest Hill, where their daughter and grandchildren resided. They were going to be building their dream home, and the property here at 50 Old Colony Road had just been put up for sale 2 weeks earlier for about $7 million. The value of that property has since been diminished because of their murders, and often properties that have murders inside, they are very hard to sell. Often they are demolished and a new property is built many years later. So Honey Sherman went to Bayview Village, did some shopping, and then she started heading home. And the Toronto Police Service does have an exact time for her arrival back home at 50 Old Colony Road. Barry Sherman, who was a workaholic, was still at his company and was sending out emails. He was having some issues with some companies in London as well as India. So he was sending out some emails to those clients. And Honey Sherman, after she went to Bayview Village, was headed home. And Bayview Village is just northwest of me here. So she would have been coming in her car along this road. And the Toronto Star says that they have video footage of the activity happening of the 4 potential suspects. The Toronto Police Service has not given any information in regards to those 4 unknown people who were in the neighbor's driveway that evening. Honey Sherman would have drove her car past the neighbor's home here and drove up into her driveway and would have entered her home at 50 Old Colony Road, and the mansion has since been demolished. And so far from the evidence that has been obtained by the investigative reporter Kevin Donovan, who works for the Toronto Star. It appears as though Honey was ambushed inside her home after she set down her bags. It was the second day of Hanukkah, and she had bags filled with gifts for her grandchildren. And she set down her purse, and when the police investigated, all of her money was still inside of her purse, which means the suspects were not interested, the suspect or suspects were not interested in a robbery because all of her money and possessions were still in the home. And I'm walking by this site of 50 Old Colony Road here. And she was ambushed and potentially murdered within minutes of entering her home. And it's quite suspect that that grainy footage of those folks who pulled up in the SUV in the neighbor's driveway could have something to do with their homicides. And I'm going to keep walking east here along Old Colony Road because these people who live here now are exceptionally paranoid. No kidding. Every person who comes along here, because this site is notorious now, the people who live in this neighborhood would prefer us, I like to say, nosy buggers, would stay away. It's hard to stay away, though, because this case is unsolved. You've got a couple of billionaires murdered in their own home, and almost 8 years later, there are still no answers, really. And the police have not given any answers in terms of what was going on that night around the time that Honey Sherman came home. Did those folks who came in the SUV, the adjacent neighbor's house, were they still there when Honey Sherman entered her home? There are still many unanswered questions here. And Barry Sherman had told a colleague that evening that he had to get home early, but he did not indicate why. And still, there is no answer as to why Barry Sherman, who was a workaholic and generally stayed late at Apotex from early morning to about 10, 11 at night, actually left early that day. So that grainy footage of the Shermans is possibly on the video of the neighbor as well, because the police are 100% sure of when Barry and Honey Sherman arrived home that night. And perhaps they're also more aware of what was going on in the neighbor's property that evening. So that would be the footage that the Toronto Star reporter was not able to observe. And the theories behind the two SUVs on the neighbor's property, and the neighbor's property was owned by health professionals, but they were not in their house. They were south of the border, so nobody was in their home. And when contacted, they had no answers. So potential theories on those two SUVs could be they were there to do potential work, but none of the lights came on inside of the neighbor's property, and it didn't appear as though they had entered the neighbor's property. So they could have been workers, maintenance workers. That's a theory. These homes are gorgeous. But the stigma of this street, I would say still haunts this really affluent street. They could have also have been burglars escaping out the neighborhood, because in 2017, this neighborhood was experiencing a lot of break-ins. So I'm still shocked that not too many folks who own property on this street had CCTV cameras with all the break-ins that were occurring, or those two SUVs potentially hold the key to who killed the Shermans on December 13th, 2017. Potentially the grainy footage is another clue to this unsolved murder of the Shermans, a cold case going into its 8th year in the city of Toronto. And I have done a few videos on this case, and much of my research comes from the Toronto Star, the superb investigative reporting of Kevin Donovan. So if you're interested in the unsolved murder of these billionaires, check out my playlist of the Sherman murders.